It is very unfortunate when what I am about to tell you is truly what happened in my life. What I am sharing is a true story. My name is Rexy. This story took place around the year 2016. At that time, I moved from one college to another, and the college I transferred to is located in a neighboring state. So one of the first things I needed to manage when I arrived at this college was to find a hostel. After all, this place was new to me, and I didn't know anyone here at the time. I took a bus from the airport directly to this college, and I was dropped off at a bus stop that was not too far from the college, so I had to walk to get there. At the bus stop, I noticed a homeless person who was sleeping soundly. I looked at the homeless person and thought that if I couldn't arrange my college accommodation for the night, I would surely end up sleeping like this homeless person. The first thing I needed to do after arriving at the college was to sort out my hostel room. So, on the first day I arrived at this college, I had to take care of the hostel arrangements. If not, I would have to sleep in a hotel. But my money was insufficient. Otherwise, I would have to sleep at that bus stop. I applied for the hostel, but the college management said that all the hostels are full, so it's quite difficult for them to provide me with a room. I have to wait for 2 or 3 days before I can get a hostel. I'm not usually the type to push. I generally accept whatever I'm given. However, this time I pleaded with the college staff to see if there were any empty rooms where I could stay for a day or two while waiting for a vacancy. I even mentioned that I wouldn't mind staying in a storage room, as long as it's not in the bathroom. In short, I felt really embarrassed because I had to plead for a hostel room. The college staff felt sorry for me since I was so desperate, so she tried to check the available hostel rooms in her notebook on the table. She checked the book page by page, and I became nervous hoping there would be something available. It took her quite a while to check, and I thought to myself, aren't you using a computer system? Are you still using ancient technology? Meanwhile, I was waiting and judging the staff who was trying to help. Suddenly he spoke up. There's an empty room here. I smiled happily because I had no money at that time. I definitely couldn't afford to rent a hotel. The money in my pocket was only enough for one meal. The staff's forehead wrinkled as he looked at the room and said, "But this room is for people with disabilities. You know, we usually don't allow anyone to stay here because this room is in the old block of the hostel, and there are currently no people in that block. But I think it's still okay if you want to stay for 2 or 3 nights. I confidently said, "It's fine as long as there's a bed." At this point, I'm just grateful. I don't care what kind of room it is. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the type who doesn't demand much and isn't very picky. Then, she registered me into that room, handed me the key, and I walked out of the college management office toward the room, with my left hand pulling my luggage bag while my right hand held the room key. I headed towards the hostel room, walking and passing through the blocks of the college hostel over there. What the college staff said earlier is indeed true. There are old and new blocks here. The blocks are somewhat separated because the old block no longer has any residents. I continued walking until I reached the old hostel block. I noticed that the further I went towards the end of the block, the fewer people there were, and I realized that these blocks were quite run down after all. It is called the old block, until I reached the very last block where the room is located. I didn't think much since I was extremely tired at that time. I continued to look for the room, and finally found myself right in front of the door, designated for people with disabilities, located on the ground floor. As my hand moved to insert the key into the lock, I also glanced to the right and left, and I noticed, wow, there's no one in this block. The college staff was right, but I tried to muster the courage to step inside. After all, I have no other choice, right? With only $20 in my pocket, I am grateful to have a room to sleep in tonight. I slowly opened the door to the room and noticed a strong gust of wind hitting my face, as if someone placed a fan right in front of me. But the breeze only lasts a moment, about 2 seconds or so. At this moment, my hair is standing on end. This place is really haunted. I already know about this room, so I quickly closed the door again and stepped back while putting my hands on my hips. Ouch, here I am standing outside that room. What am I going to do? I asked myself if I have the courage to stay here tonight. Honestly, I'm really not brave. If I could, I would want to sleep somewhere else. But what gives me the courage is that I look in my pocket and see I only have $20 left. Never mind. Suddenly I had the courage to try to enter for the second time. But this time I moved quickly, opening the door wide and stepping in. My movements were like a ninja. When I was in that room, I froze in place. I thought to myself, this thing, whatever is in this room, certainly doesn't waste any time. I mean, at least come at night while I'm sleeping, not just as I walk in. You suddenly appear. In front of my eyes, there was a black shadow standing in the corner of the dim room. This thing was staring at me while I stood frozen like a lamppost. It wasn't that I was stiff. I just felt powerless to do anything. My body felt as if it were locked in place because I was so scared. Our eyes met for about 30 seconds, and I was seriously terrified to the point where I couldn't move. I felt that those 30 seconds were the longest and most frightening moments of my life, and I sensed that the terrifying black shadow felt the same. The silence was only broken by the sound of the wind blowing. In those 30 seconds, I could imagine what was on the mind of that terrifying black shadow. I was so scared that I stood frozen like a lamppost. When I finally managed to move, I looked back, grabbed my bag, and ran out of the room. I felt like I was running 100 meters, but it seemed like only 10 meters because I was running so fast. I was really terrified at that moment. From behind, I heard the loud bang of the door. It was the door to my hostel room. Without realizing it, night had fallen. I then left the college area and headed to the bus stop. I saw the homeless person from earlier still there, wrapped in a tattered blanket, sleeping deeply. At that moment, I was extremely exhausted, and in a weak voice, I asked the homeless person if there was still space.